Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the NanoBlitz Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Edelman, and today we're going to be doing our second episode of my mini deep dive series. And the topic of this episode is pretty interesting, and it's going to be about the oversaturation of wide receivers in the NFL. And if you don't know what that means, basically we're going to be talking about this is my personal opinions about how the receiver market is currently and how it's going to change in the future. As we all know, there's been plenty of signings, trades, big contracts for receivers this offseason. In this offseason in particular, I mean, you look at guys like Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams getting these huge contracts, but in reality, it all started from Christian Kirk getting that huge 4-year, $72 million contract when really he was a receiver too. He's a mediocre receiver too, and he was getting that contract from the Jaguars, and that really messed up the entire receiver market. And we're still seeing the effects of that today. It's really set off a chain reaction. But going back to the topic, we're going to be talking about how I think that not even just that signing, but all these signings in general is, in my opinion, inflating the value of the receiver position in the NFL due to honestly almost overvaluing the receiver position, and how I think this could affect the position in the future. So to start off with, I do think a superstar wide receiver can change an offense, but the question is getting one really worth multiple first-round picks in $25 to $30 million per year? I mean, we saw two trades in particular this offseason. There was a couple more, like A.J. Brown to the Eagles with just one first-round pick. But we saw Devontae Adams get traded from Green Bay to Las Vegas for a first-round pick in this year and a second-round pick this year. And they still had to pay the man. I don't know the exact details of the contract, but it was similar to Tyreek Hill's 4-year, $120 million deal, which is around $30 million, round it, $30 million per year for the superstar receiver. And yeah, these receivers are great, but I don't think people understand how much really money that is. The only person on a team that should probably get being paid that much, in my opinion, is the quarterback, because even if you're the best of your position, which Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams are two of the best of that position, I'm not debating that fact. It's just true. They're two of the best receivers in the league, and I'm actually a big fan of Tyreek Hill, and Devontae Adams is probably the best receiver in the league. But is it really worth paying them $25-30 million per year, considering that receivers are dependent on other people for success? Yes, you can be a talented receiver with a bad quarterback, but to succeed in the NFL, you don't need a good quarterback to succeed as a receiver, but it definitely helps to have a good receiver more than it would help, in my opinion, a quarterback. I think that a receiver having a good quarterback is more important for the receiver than a quarterback having a good receiver for the quarterback. Because I think a quarterback, if you're talented enough, I do think, although it's hard to do it in any position because football really is, it's a team sport. It's a team sport, so it's hard to do that at any position, but I think it's more manageable as a quarterback I think it's more manageable to do that as a quarterback than as a receiver, and that's why I think quarterbacks are paid the most, because they're the most important position. And you could even argue that left tackles are more important than receivers. I would personally argue that at best, receivers are only the third most important position on offense, at best. But yeah, behind quarterback and left tackle. And honestly, the fact that they're being paid this much is insane. And we even saw it in the draft this year, because every year it just seems like there's a strong receiver class every year, every single year. Even when we leave out these freakish anomalies like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, who are just absolutely record-breaking athletes, and they immediately become some of the best receivers. Even when you leave out guys like that, since 2019 alone, we've got an A.J. Brown. Be ready for this, by the way. This is insane. This is since 2019. We have got an A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Jamar Jefferson and Chase, who are all superstar players, along with a bunch of good to average starters in Deontay Johnson, Hunter Renfrow, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, Claypool, Waddle, Devontae Smith, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And that is literally just in the last three draft classes. That's just in 2021, 2020, and 2019, those three draft classes. And that's not even to mention all the receivers that were taken this year. And honestly, I was planning on making this out. To be honest, I was planning on making this episode before the draft. I had it all planned out before the draft, and I was gonna film it, but I didn't really get around to it just from being busy. But honestly, it's better to film this after the draft, because that whatever just happened on the draft, that absolutely proved my point. I mean, we saw teams trading up just so far to get their receivers. We saw the Saints trade up at 11 first to grab Chris Olave, and then we saw the Lions do it a pick later to grab Jamison Williams. I thought both of those teams were going to go with Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett, but they went with their receivers, which just shows how far the NFL is kind of overvaluing this position, honestly. We saw in the first round of the 2022 class, we saw 6 wide receivers be taken. Many of these were traded up to do so. And a lot of them were in the top 15. I think at least 3 of them were in the top 15. There might have been more, honestly. But I know that Garrett Wilson was the first one off the board at 8. Then Chris Olave at 11. And then Jamison Williams at 12. And then even later in the draft, we saw the Titans trade away their already superstar receiver, A.J. Brown, to grab the cheaper option in Jahan Dotson. And this could honestly be a peek into the future where you don't want to pay the receivers, so you just trade them away. And this is going to go into my next point, where I'm going to say that I think that over the next decade, I think we'll see a similar thing that will happen to the receiver position, kind of what we're seeing with running backs recently. You know, back like 20, 30 years ago, hell, even probably in like the 2000s and start of the 2010s, running backs really could be the focal point of the offense, and they were getting compensated to do so. I mean, we see so many. There's still obviously a lot of dominant running backs these days. Christian McCaffrey when healthy, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor. There is a lot of great running backs in the league. That's not the issue. But we've seen through injuries and replacement why it's not really a good idea to pay these guys big money. And we see multiple examples of that, either not paying them big money or not drafting them early. Saquon Barkley was drafted at number 2, and he struggled so far. We will never see a running back, at least for the next 10 to 15 years. Until the running backs hopefully make a resurgence, which is a theory I have in mind as well, but that's honestly for another topic. I don't think for the next 10 or 15 years we will see a running back go in the top 3 or even top 5. Because the last 2 that have been taken are Saquon Barkley and Leonard Fournette, and neither one has turned out they're still good players, but when you select a running back in an expendable position at number 2 overall, you expect them to change the offense. And we're seeing that they don't have as much of an impact as they once did, which is why they won't get these huge contracts anymore. I mean, we're seeing it now. Prime example right now is with the Dallas Cowboys, who gave Ezekiel Elliott that huge contract a couple of years ago, and they're clearly regretting it now, as Tony Pollard has shown that he could do more of his touches than Zeke can, both being paid at a fraction of the cost. And I honestly think that we could see a similar thing happen with receivers that we've seen with running backs over the last decade. I think that what we've seen with running backs recently, we will see over the next decade a similar thing happen to the wide receiver position. I think that teams will realize that they can get a solid to above average wide receiver in the 2nd or 3rd round of the draft. And who even knows? They could get a superstar too. But they could at least get an average or solid to above average, or even a star. Maybe just not the superstar top 3 wide receiver like Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams. But they could do this and get him in the 2nd or 3rd round, or on a cheap contract, instead of giving their superstar wide receiver $30 million a year. And this isn't to say that guys like Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill aren't completely game-changing players, but paying one guy $30 million a year at a position that is extremely dependent on quarterback and overall good offensive play, I think it'll come back to bite some teams. And I don't know who it'll come back to bite in particular, but I think at least one of these teams that has paid big money for a receiver, either the Eagles of A.J. Brown, you got the Dolphins of Tyreek Hill, and the Raiders of Devontae Adams. I think that at least one of these teams will be thinking to themselves, why did I make that trade? Why did I give them this contract? And I think it'll definitely come back to bite them. And overall, I just think we're really just seeing an overvaluation of the position. They can be game-changing players, like I said, but really, when it comes down to it, a receiver is not going to change the way an offensive plays the same way as a quarterback, and they simply should not be getting paid $30 million a year, in my opinion. And not to say that, obviously, congratulations to the players for getting a lot of money. Like, I'm never going to diss a player, even on players on terrible contracts. They negotiated that, and they got the contract, so props to them. But teams, I don't think, should be paying $30 million per year for a receiver that is dependent on other positions and can't change the game in the same way a quarterback can. And that's pretty much all I have to talk about today. I just wanted to bring this kind of point up and say what I think is kind of going to be the future. We'll see if this take ages well. We'll see if it ages horribly and receivers just continue to get paid $30 million a year and pan out. Well, it could age terribly. This is just a take I've had for a while, and I wanted to share it with you guys. And it's kind of like it's what I wanted to do with these deep dive episodes. I wanted to dive into a concept that not a lot of people talk about. I have really never seen anyone talk about stuff like this. But these deep dives, I like to talk about things people don't talk about a lot, and just kind of give like 10 to 15 minutes of my time, and a little shorter episode, easier to watch. It just gets a concept out there and makes you think, honestly. So I really hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to check out the Instagram @NanoBlitz Podcast. I'm posting stuff actively on there. Schedules came out tonight, not when you're watching this, but the post should be up about my top games that I'm looking forward to next year. And yeah, there's going to be a lot more content coming soon. It's a long off season ahead, and the NanoBlitz will be providing quality content all the way through. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for staying until the end, and see you guys next time.